Minister, your government is all over the place on student fees. We've had the Minister for Higher Education, James Lawless, clearly stating on Sunday that without a cost of living package in the budget, college fees are going up by €1,000 in September. His position was then backed up by the Taoiseach Micheál Martin. So today, let's clear this mess up. I've just one simple question for you, and it's the same question that's been anxiously asked in kitchen tables all over the country. When students get their bill in September, how much will they be asked to pay? Will it be €2,000 or will it be €3,000? Students and their families need an answer to that question today, Minister, and it's the only question I have for you.
Well, the brevity of your question gives me a moment then to outline what government is already doing to help with the
one question,
cost of student accommodation and to make a difference to what we know is a huge cost for many families. And the government is very clear in recognising that education, particularly higher and further education, allows students to fulfil their potential and makes a vital role in the economic development of our country and creating the jobs and culture that is the heart of the progress that Ireland is making. So let me outline the supports that we're already making and what we're already doing to respond back to the need that we know is there. At the moment, with the support that the government has made available, through Minister Lawless, through the work of this and the last government, 1 in 3 students at the moment did not pay a student contribution. They did not make that contribution. Half of students at the moment, through the SUSI scheme that is available, are supported in costs for becoming students that we know are difficult. The government has adjusted the standard rate income thresholds by 15% to ensure that more families, more students are in a position to get the help that they need. And as it is today, households with an income of up to €64,000 do not pay a student contribution. And for those families that have more people within them or higher numbers of children, that ceiling is higher again. For postgraduate education, maintenance grants have now been fully restored, and a SUSI support is now available for the first time for somebody who's on a hybrid or part-time education. So that's what the government has already done. That is what is already in place. In recognition by us of the great challenge that many families do face and the students face in costs for education that we know are high. And that is the supports that are in place. So why have we been able to do this? It's for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's due to the hard work of the Irish people and the contribution that they make to our economy that in turn creates the resources that we're in a position then to spend. And secondly, it is because budget by budget, the government has put in place measures that we believe we can sustain, that are affordable, that can accompany all the other things that we need to do in higher and further education for students. The capital investment that Minister Lawless announced a number of days ago in relation to additional student accommodation, additional student facilities, more facilities for a group of universities. The funding that is in place to help improve the quality of education that students received, that only a week ago resulted in many Irish universities moving up the world of league ratings regarding their academic performance. So budget by budget, we make changes that we believe are affordable, that recognise the challenges that are there, which is why what we will do is in the approaching budget, do what we normally do. Put in place measures, including those to deal with the cost of becoming a student, with the challenge that so many families face, that we know is affordable, that we know we can fund, that we know we can build upon in the years ahead. Minister Lawless, myself, Minister Chambers are very clear on what that objective is. We're very clear that temporary measures that were in place when inflation was so high, we now need to look at how we can put in place other measures that can make a difference to something we know is such an acute difficulty for so many, and for so many are already receiving support that we know is needed. Your question may have been brief, but the answer in relation to it is longer, outlining the supports and the difference that we already make that we want to build upon.
Deputy Carthy.
Last Concorla, we've had the Taoiseach, we've had the Taoiseach, the Minister for Higher Education, the Minister for Public Expenditure and now the Minister for Finance, all together, between you all, cannot answer the most simple question that, as I say, is going to have a life-defining impact on many students and their families who are having conversations today, Minister. They're having conversations today that are going to have an impact for the rest of their life, whether they can travel to university or college or whether they have to find somewhere more locally, whether they will be able to afford a place to rent or whether they will have to commute. They don't want to hear what politicians are planning to do at some point in the future. I could stand up here and talk about how Sinn Féin don't want to just keep fees at 2,000. We want to abolish them, but that isn't going to answer the questions that are being asked today. And I'll ask you one more time, the same question that's been put to your Taoiseach, to the Taoiseach and to successive ministers all week. Are fees going to be €2,000 as they were last year, or are they going to be higher? Please, Minister, give people the common decency. Come down from your ivory tower and answer that question, because they need to know, and they need to know today.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
It is exactly because this issue is life-defining for so many that the government already has supports in place that, of course, you will never acknowledge in any contribution that you make. The difference between those of us who sit over here and you, Deputy Carthy, is we are interested in solutions rather than sound bites. We're interested in action that will make a difference rather than your attempt at action for the issue of the day. The answer in relation to this question is the same as the answer that has been given at every other point in recent years, which is that because this is such an important issue, it's an issue that has to be decided budget by budget, in the engagement that every minister has with the rest of government, with the Minister for Public Expenditure, and the progress, the supports that are in place recognise that this is not only something that be life-defining in a positive way, but something that also brings with it costs. And what this government wants to do is help in a permanent way, and we will outline our answer to that serious question, as we will with many others, when the budget is complete.
Deputy Whitmore.
Minister,
Deputy Whitmore, please.
Minister, when is your government going to get its act together and actually level with parents and students? It is 5 days since the Higher Education Minister took to the airwaves and dropped the bombshell that parents and students were going to have to find another €1,000 to fund college before September. He didn't try to sugarcoat that news. In fact, it was quite the opposite. He said, and I quote, "All of us in any walk of life have to play the hands we are dealt." It was utterly galling and absolutely incredibly tone-deaf, Minister. A member of government actively stacking the deck against students and families, essentially telling them to suck it up. That's what he said. And play the bum hand that they have been dealt. Minister, Elaine is one parent who is trying her best to play the hand she was dealt. She has one daughter going to college and another one starting in September. She has already told her children they can't go to college in Dublin because accommodation is too expensive. And now she is worried about how she will cover student fees, which are increasing for her from €2,000 to €6,000. Elaine told Liveline that she and her family went on a foreign holiday recently. It was the third time that they've been abroad in 22 years, and now she really regrets that decision because she does not know if she can afford to send her children to college. Minister, there are thousands of families all over the country in the exact same boat that Elaine is in. They have built family budgets on commitments given by you and your colleagues. They believed Fianna Fáil and they believed Fine Gael when you promised to reduce fees during the election, and they believed your promises in the programme for government that you would reduce college fees, and they have been betrayed. They have learned from this that this government cannot be trusted, that your promises are not worth the paper they are written on. Minister, students and families have been led down the garden path by this government, and they are absolutely sick of your games. I'm really astonished that you think it is okay to tell families, wait until the budget and we'll clarify matters for you. That is 4 months away, Minister. 4 months. Students and families cannot budget like that. They need to make plans now. They don't have a grand or three down the back of the sofa that they can easily pull out. They will need to scrimp and save and sacrifice to cover this increase. Do you not understand that, Minister? Do you not get that? Minister, this government promised to reduce college fees. You should have absolutely no problem today in clarifying whether you're going to keep to that commitment that you made. Can you please tell Elaine and all those other parents out there whether or not they will see an increase in college fees come September? Will they be required to pay €2,000 or €3,000, Minister?
Thanks, Deputy Minister.
So firstly, I want to deal with the different language and points that you've made there before I come on to the really important issue of Elaine, her children and her children's future. Firstly, for you to use language such as stacking the deck against students does no justice to the seriousness of this cause and demeans the need for serious debate regarding important decisions that this country has to make. For you to suggest that the Minister for Higher and Further Education is looking to make decisions that disadvantage students, that he's looking to make decisions that worsen the prospect of students, not only do I know you really don't believe that, but I know that you, by making that charge, devalue the issue for a serious debate here, which you are raising. What Minister Lawless is seeking to do, and which he will do with the support from government, is look at how we make progress on the programme for government. Look at how we can deal with issues of affordability, how we can make progress on affordability of issues of higher and further education, while dealing with all of the other important issues which Elaine and the rest of the country want to see us make progress on. In relation to the broad issue that you are raising on affordability, let me again state what we do, because it's important to acknowledge what is there before we look at how it can be improved. It's important that even if these supports are not available to Elaine, they're available to other people. They're available to other citizens, because we recognise the importance of the affordability of higher and further education, and we're committed to looking at how that can be improved. The reality that, as you put that question to me today, 143,000 students and their families benefit from fees. They benefit from that because they deserve to benefit from it. Because we know that for those 143,000 families, their students might not be able to go to college and benefit from the ability to have your prospects reshaped by going to higher and further education and studying further. The reality that 60,000 students at the moment benefit from, because again they deserve to benefit from, lower forms of student contribution, and that the reality that today that 80,000 of our student population is now benefiting from either no fees at all because of the various schemes that are in place, or partial fees. And all of that is in place because of our desire, the commitment that we have to ensure that Elaine, all the other families across the country for whom affordability is an issue, that there are supports in place to help. And what we will be doing is, as we move to the necessity of having more normal budgets in place year by year, looking at how we can make progress, which we will, on the affordability, the quality and the access to higher and further education. And that is what the government will do, and we will work with Minister Lawless and the rest of government to make progress on this.
Minister, you are clearly not listening to what I'm saying. And what is worse is you're clearly not listening to what parents and what students are saying at the moment. They believed you when you said in the programme for government that your government would continue to reduce the student fees. Continue to reduce. They believed you when you said that. So it really couldn't be any simpler, Minister. The question is, are you going to keep your promise, or are you going to break your promise? That is the question, Minister. Will parents be paying €2,000 in September, or will they be paying €3,000? Don't answer me, Minister. Answer all the parents out there who are asking that question. At least give them the respect to give them that information so they can plan their budgets for September.
Minister.
But it is because of my respect for those families that it's important to give a clear and honest answer. It's important to recognise that those families also have other needs and issues that they want our country to make progress on. And in order for us to make progress on those collectively, we have to make decisions as part of our budget process so we can ensure that the changes that we make are affordable, that they're sustainable, and they can be built upon in the years ahead. The families that you are raising are the same families that engage with me. They're the same families that are contacting deputies here on the government benches with not only questions on this, but on many other priorities they want to see the government make progress on. And what we have done each year, and it will continue, and we will need to do that in the context now of having normal budgets in a world that is becoming more uncertain and more complex, is looking at how we can make improvements budget by budget, which is why, as has always been the case, we'll be in a position to give a clear answer to that when our budgetary work is done, to respond back to all of the needs that are there within our society, in addition to this critical need of the affordability of education.
Deputy Paul Murphy.
Thanks, Lashkan Corla. Yesterday, Minister, 94 Palestinians were killed in Gaza. 45 of them were killed while waiting for aid from the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Today, just so far, 87 people have been killed, and every day has a similar horrific number of casualties. In just 1 month, 600 Palestinians have been killed, more than 4,200 have been wounded by Israeli fire near aid distribution sites. A new low in this genocide: the use of aid as a weapon to ethnically cleanse large parts of the Gaza Strip and to assemble people in order to be shot down in what's been described as a death trap. People saw the horrendous pictures from Monday of a cafe and the people inside blown to bits. It's been reported now that a 500-pound bomb was used by the Israeli military to do this. Minister, you have previously and repeatedly defended the authorisation of the sale of Israeli bonds by the Irish Central Bank. We know now from the Central Bank that 418 million euros was raised by Israel in these war bonds approved by the Central Bank between October 2023 and April 2025. That's a quarter of all funds generated globally by these bonds. How many bullets did that pay for? How many missiles did it pay for? How many bombs did it pay for? Do you accept now that it is time to stop this complicity of the Irish state in genocide? Let me quote from a central bank worker. When over 50,000 people, 17,000 of them children, are dead, murdered in their homes, schools, hospitals, or killed trying to escape the slaughter, Rafah, Jabalia, Khan Yunis, etc., I must admit I find it difficult to discern the difference between the bank's official line, "We are guided by the law, and if the requirements under the prospectus regulations are being met, we must comply with the law," and the defence claimed by Soldier F, the perpetrators of genocide in Rwanda, Cambodia, Sudan, Myanmar, the defendants at Nuremberg. We were just following orders, the superior order defence. The same applies to a government which has twice now voted not to end this complicity. It's incredibly unfair to put the workers in this situation because of your failure to act. We know that there's an email from the Israeli Ministry of Justice previously talking about a confidential phone call with you, and you saying that the government would block the Occupied Territories Bill. Now here we are again, you blocking action to stop funding the genocide. What will it take to shift the government on this?
Minister.
What will it take for you to act?
So again, in recognition of the horror that has been inflicted on the people of Gaza, the loss of life, the new law that we are seeing being perpetrated when aid is being used in a way that appears to be assembling people for further death, for further injury. Let me outline what the government has done and what we continue to do to respond back in a diplomatic and practical way to this. The work that the Irish government has done in responding back to the clear sentiment of the people of Ireland in our intervention in the International Court of Justice in South Africa, what has happened in recognising Palestine as a sovereign and independent state, our support for a proposal from the Netherlands to review the EU's trade and political relationship with Israel, the fact that we were the first country to call for UNRWA to remain in Gaza, and for the last 2 years alone, we've allocated now €58 million to support their work, and the fact that Ireland has been at the very heart, as demonstrated by the Taoiseach and Taoiseach in the last number of weeks alone, at making a case for a different diplomatic approach from the European Union to respond back to the loss of life and to the horror that the people of Gaza are confronting. And that was recognised only yesterday, or earlier in the week. The Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister of Qatar, visited Ireland to engage with us, a country that is playing a key role in trying to stabilise and bring peace to the Middle East, to engage with the government regarding our diplomatic efforts and the work that we are doing to make a difference. The charge that you've made against me personally, I want to again refute. Note that that call didn't happen. I can't help be struck by the irony that you'd rather believe the Ministry for Justice of Israel than me on the matter, given everything else you say about that state. And as regards the role of the central bank, let me again emphasise what they don't do. They do not sell bonds on behalf of the State of Israel, neither are these bonds listed in our stock exchange. And the legislation that the opposition has proposed, which, yes, you're right, I argued against and voted against, we believe it is unworkable, and we believe it would not have been in line with the law of the European Union. Instead, what we need to do, recognising the fact that while we are members of the European Union, there are many other members of the European Union that do hold differing views, is work to build up a diplomatic consensus to make a difference to that issue. And that is not done by us acting on our own. That is done by the patient work of diplomacy, which the Taoiseach and Taoiseach are at the heart of doing, to change the stance of the European Union on this issue, while taking action ourselves, which we have done, which is recognised by the people, by their leaders of Palestine, to make a difference to the horror that we see unfolding.
Thanks, Minister. Deputy.
Thanks. I mean, every time we raise this, we get the same response from the government, which is basically to say, why aren't you thanking us for all that we're doing? Why aren't you thanking us for not being as bad as the Western states that literally arm, fund, enable this genocide? But I'm sorry, we have a higher standard, and I think the public has a higher standard, of no complicity in the genocide. And that isn't just a moral standard, that is a legal standard. Under international law, all states have an obligation not to assist in any illegal situation such as occupation, illegal settlements, apartheid or genocide. The Irish government itself recognises that genocide is happening. Do you not see that providing access to EU markets to fundraise, to support genocide, is a violation of our obligation not to assist? It's true, the central bank doesn't endorse this, but they authorise it. Without the authorisation of a central bank, these bonds could not be sold. That's over €400 million.
Thanks, Deputy.
Do you not accept, Minister, that you should act, that declaring it a genocide has consequences? You should do everything in your power. The central bank has said they will adhere to any financial sanctions or restrictive measures that are imposed under law. So we should therefore, you should instruct the central bank, or we should change the law. We need to stop the sale of genocide bonds.
Minister.
At what point in my contribution did I look for thanks or recognition? At what point in the statement that I or any other member of the government have made in relation to what is unfolding in the Middle East have we looked for recognition from you, or indeed for anybody else? What we are doing is using the diplomatic resources that are available to us using our political leadership to make a difference in practical and political terms to the people of Gaza and to the horror that is unfolding to them that has gone on for too long. In calling for a ceasefire, in making the case for a review of the trading relationship with Israel within the European Union, in the work that the Taoiseach did in the European Council last week, in the work that the Taoiseach has done in all of the Foreign Affairs Council that he has attended. That is what we are doing by action. And what I'm not going to do, you made reference to the need for higher standards. Well, there are standards that matter here. There are standards that matter in terms of only giving commitments to things that we know we can legally do that can have a practical effect. And that's what this government is doing. Our actions are recognised by those who lead the people of Palestine, by their allies.
Thanks,
but regardless of that, what we will do is continue with the patient political work that is needed to make a difference to a ceasefire and to support the people of Gaza at their hour of greatest need.
Deputy Kenneth Flynn.
Thank you, Ciarán Comhairle. And could I just add to the sympathies that were passed yesterday to the family of Father Kevin Crowley on behalf of Independent Ireland. Minister, the European Commission has now issued a formal notice to this state demanding that we implement the so-called hate speech laws under the threat of infringement proceedings. And once again, I see indications from this government of the bending of the knee. They're willing to compromise the constitutional freedoms of the Irish people to appease the European institutions and digital outrage merchants. So let me ask you plainly, will this government stand over a law that criminalises people for what they think, criminalises people for what they say, rather than what they do? Because we're not talking about the incitement of violence, we're not talking about threats or harassment, we're talking about words, ideas and opinions. Often and sometimes unpopular and uncomfortable, but still lawful expressions which is supposedly free under a republic. Minister, are you aware in Finland a Member of Parliament was prosecuted for publicly citing Scripture? In Sweden, a pastor was given a 1-month prison sentence for publishing his sermon. In Denmark, an MP was convicted for his views on Islam. Interestingly, in the Danish laws 266b, the truth is not a defence in hate speech and the Danish speech laws, regardless of the factual accuracy in a statement that is deemed insulting. Minister, in parts of Europe, laws are being used to criminalise satire and prosecute artists and silence dissent. In Scotland, even private conversations spoken within one's own home may fall within the remit of the criminal hate speech. This is not theoretical, Minister, this is actually happening. We must... Could we have one meeting of the Dáil, please? We must, if we're to pass this legislation, what comes next? We have to ask ourselves that question. Will quoting Scripture become a punishable act, something that finds the teachings of exclusionism? Will religious observations be demanded as hateful if they conflict with the views of the public? Will the right to express a moral belief be not, if it's found uncomfortable, be not accepted? Ireland already has hate speech laws, Minister, in place, which are genuinely hate speech, which are about the incitement of violence. So what exactly is the real purpose of this proposed legislation that is to come before us? To protect people from violence, or to protect people, or to protect the government from criticism? So, Minister, could I ask you, who will define hate in this House? Will it be the courts? Will it be civil servants? Will it be an online administrative service? Will it be an algorithm? What will be the threshold if I disagree with somebody in worldwide views on criminality? Will I be found as a criminal for having a different view to you, Minister?
Please, Minister.
Well, you certainly won't be found a criminal for having a different view with me anyway, Deputy. I can assure you of that. And I think as we're dealing with this important matter that is at the heart of how we conduct politics within our society and within our liberal democracy that we're all proud of, that we know we can never take for granted, that we have to protect and renew by act and deed and word, it's important to remember what has already happened and what is the legal framework in relation to all of this. So as the House will be aware, in the 31st of December of last year, the Criminal Justice Hate Offences Act of 2024 came into effect. And what that prescribed is prison service sentences for very, very specific crimes where words or incitement was proven to be motivated by hatred or where hatred was demonstrated. And what that did is it put in place the right legislation and right legal framework to ensure that any assault that was aggravated in any way by hatred was one that was going to attract a higher prison sentence. So that's what we've already done. And I think, therefore, in dealing with your issues and the charges that you have made regarding how we want to maintain that balance, I think it is a balance that deserves further debate and maybe in a kind of a more careful way. I do believe that the use of language and the way we describe issues here in this House does have an effect on the tone of politics. And I believe the tone of politics in turn affects the conduct of politics and how we can make the case for politics as a force for good and helping with the issues that all of us are elected to raise. But we will do that in a way that gets that balance right. I'm not familiar with the detail of the legislation that you've referred to in Denmark or Sweden. I know they are political traditions that are every bit as proud as us, that take the case of parliamentary democracy and freedom of expression every bit as seriously as we do. But I know here in Ireland, if there is a cause to consider the matter further, we will do three things. Firstly, we will ensure that whatever we do continues to be consistent with the constitutional framework that we have here in place within our country, which we cherish. Secondly, any such moves, any such further decisions are ones that always have to be proportionate and recognise the deep value of free speech and the right for freedom of expression. But thirdly and finally, freedom of expression is not cost-free or consequence-free. Words can be used in such a way that causes more than hurt, that causes more than offence, but can influence how others act. And that is recognised in the legislation the government already has in place, and you and others can be assured that in any further consideration of this issue, the government and Minister O'Callaghan will always be aware of the delicate and vital balance that we need to maintain.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Colin. Minister, you are aware that the Commission has sent a request to the state on this and asked us to tighten the laws. And are you prepared under the Minister of as the Department of Finance to pay the fines if we don't change the laws? Is that going to be something, because there is proceedings there? There is proceedings there, and it has been cited from the European Union. Minister, I want to draw your attention to the European Courts of Human Rights in the Handyside versus the United Kingdom in 1976, where the freedom of expression included speech that offends, shocks and disturbs is included in that and has been accepted by by that. I also want to bring your attention to Bunnock here in Article 40.6.1 with the right to expression under our Constitution. So, Minister, could you really confirm to us that there will be no other influence now from the European Union about bringing in or entering more hate speeches? Because there is a genuine concern out there about people's right to talk and about people's right to stand out. And, Minister, I would say to you as well, there's many people in this country who have a conflicting view with lots of European countries when it comes to Palestine and Israel. Will all those people be included under a hate speech law?
Minister.
So the European Union is an institution that we are part of, that we shape, that we can benefit from, that we influence. Implicit in your question is the idea that the European Union are handing down direction, are making decisions that in some way we're not able to influence and in some way that we're not able to respond back to. I'm not familiar with the exact detail of the engagement that the Commission have with the Department of Justice. I know the Minister for Justice will be treating any such engagement from the Commission in a very serious way. You made reference to the European Court of Human Rights, another institution that has done so much to protect, to advance human rights and political and civil liberties, another institution that Ireland engages with and has the greatest of respect for. What I can do is just restate back the principles that I outlined there a few moments ago, that freedom of expression is precious, liberty in a liberal democracy is something that we must protect, But words and acts do also have consequences, and we've looked to recognise that in the legislation that we have in place, that the Dáil passed, and I know that any further initiatives that could be originating within the European Union or elsewhere will be conscious of the need here in Ireland for us to maintain that balance.
Thank you. Understanding R 38A, I ask Deputy Ciara Keogh.
Gur maith agat las can córa